where that example, you'd be at work and you're like, I've been at work working, but I feel like I've got nothing done. Like,
get out what you're putting in. All your hopes and efforts are all in vain. Who will pick you up when you've lost everything? Does it all become for granted with a wedding ring?
Hello, people of the world. I am here to thank you so much for clicking on this episode, for coming on this journey with me, for joining me in this, and checking out the Enneagram number 9. I highly encourage you to check out the explanation and the purpose of this project, and how, as Christians, we can look at the Enneagram as a tool rather than use it as a lifeline or use it as the answer for everything. So that link will be down in the description below if you want to check that out. In this episode, I got to interview 9 different people that identify as the Enneagram number 9. And I am very excited to present this information to you. A lot of my close friends are 9s, and so it was a joy to hear different people's perspectives and different people's lives and where they are in their faith walk, and the way that they think. So I hope that these stories and these people's lives inspire you, encourage you, point you back to Christ, and especially remind you that you are not alone. And anything that you do or say or think or how you process the world, because God is always there for you, and there's always someone that is going through the same thing that you are going through. So, without further ado, I present to you the Enneagram number 9.
We're going to talk, this preview is going to be the essential message that this number received often as a child, and it was a wounding message, or a message that told them they're not enough, they're not worthy, it's not okay. And then I will also give you the essential good message that they need to hear, the thing that their hearts are longing to hear. So for a 9, we have heard early on in our lives, it's not okay to assert yourself. It's not okay to assert yourself. And the good message that we are longing for is that your presence matters. They want to achieve that state of oneness and peace. And it's kind of like this really ideal kind of move, but it is like just this really like beautiful Zen moment. And so they do the balance work in themselves and in a room that kind of stabilizes and equalizes everything. I want it to be okay. I want us to find peace and an equilibrium. I find peace and equilibrium by understanding where people are coming from. And oftentimes the first factor to be removed is themselves. We can see a lot. And then what happens is that information is kind of like a shockwave that comes at me. And 9s are really good about numbing. that shockwave. It's so overwhelming. I can see a lot of people's pain. I cannot process it, and therefore I shut down. We're good at not doing the work of engaging because for us, we see so much that it's like an avalanche. We see all of it and we can't cope. And so we cope by pulling away. We don't engage with ourselves and we don't engage with others. The high side can be this real beautiful understanding of humanity and the oneness and the connection and the deep rooted understanding that we all don't need to be fighting. Like we can have a deep awareness of abundance. In order for me to be okay, they need to be okay, and they need to be okay, and they need to be okay. My okayness is wrapped up in other people's okayness. I don't want you to think I'm too loud or too obnoxious or anything like that. So I'll self-regulate to the point where I'm just vanilla. 9 challenge is to see myself, to see my patterns. I'm really good about looking at everyone else. I have to do the work of seeing myself. And so seeing how I hurt people, but also seeing how I'm cheering for both teams. That's a good thing. You don't need to be at each other's throats. Dang it. No, like there are some good things. So yeah.
For sure.
All right, well, my name is Lauren Wilcox, and I am living in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm a 3rd grade teacher and at a Christian school.
Hi, my name is Suli Chia. I'm from Malaysia. I'm a student at the University of Cincinnati.
Hi, I'm Sarah Woodkey. I have grown up in Iowa, Fort Dodge, Iowa, and I'm currently living in Nashville, Tennessee, where I serve as preschool director of admissions and enrollment.
And I'm Ben Leeper. I'm from Colorado. And right now I am on my vicarage in Collinsville, Illinois. So right now I'm studying to be a pastor.
Okay, my name is Naomi Moon. I'm originally from Colorado, and right now I'm in St. Louis, working at Christ Memorial Lutheran Church, doing children and family ministry as a DCE.
Hi, I'm Laura Goodell. I'm originally from the great state of Michigan, but I moved to Cincinnati well over 50 years ago, and I love it here. And I am worshiping regularly at Grace. I'm a member of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, which is downtown in over the Rhine, and I was a founding member there, which is why I've kept my membership there. So I know Laura Lee from Grace, and have worked with her on a few projects.
So my name is Charles Dudley. I am originally from Roanoke, Virginia. I'm born and raised there. I am now living in Cincinnati, currently doing full-time ministry with a church plant in the city, the Mission Cincinnati, and I serve there as the director of community engagement.
My name is Grace Schultz. I grew up in Colorado, but I currently live in Pocatello, Idaho. I teach 5th grade there.
So my name is Jordan Scott. I am from Nebraska, from a small town called Scribner, Nebraska. I'm currently in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, doing a year-long vicarage, pastoral internship through Concordia Seminary. So I'm working with a church here in Wisconsin, and then I'll go back for another year of school, and then I'll be entering into pastoral ministry.
And I'm an Enneagram 9.
I am an Enneagram number 9.
And I am a 9.
And I am a 9.
And what else? Oh, my number is 9.
Yes.
My number is 9. Yes.
And my Enneagram number is a 9.
My number, I am a 9.
Deadly sin based on this test is slothfulness. Would you agree with that? And if so, how do you deal with that deadly sin?
I would agree with it. And slothfulness, just think of a sloth and you know what it is. move really slowly and like to sit a lot and just hang out.
Slothfulness being lazy, right?
Well,
or just slow, because sloths are very slow.
yes.
I don't think I'm slow, but
Okay, so
I certainly am lazy at
I
times.
definitely agree with that. I think one of the ways that I'll often put words to this is I'll talk about like complacency. I think some of my tendency is to prefer to do nothing, prefer to almost support the status quo because the status quo works.
You can just kind of become a little bit, I don't know, apathetic, or just like fine where you're at, that you don't like have the motivation to move forward. Or you can just kind of stay still and be content with it, even though, you know, we're supposed to be uncomfortable, we're supposed to grow in that way, but sometimes it's just easier just to, you know, go on with life and just, I don't know, stay in this steadiness that is good because it's peaceful and it's fine, you know.
9s are generally a different bit of every different number, but not really, they don't really have like a strong core for their own selves. My mom always tells me that like I do this thing, she'd be like, but you're always doing all these projects for other people, like so much so that you're like forgetting your own projects. And I think that's like a really true statement. And I think that probably is kind of relevant to what you're talking about for
I definitely have a guilt complex actually surrounding slothfulness, I think, because I overly busy myself, and I think I'm productive when I want to be, and I am always busy working on things. Sometimes is that to the detriment of my own mental health or to the detriment of my own relationships, or specifically my relationship with God, because I'm trying to take on a business and take on all these other things instead of spending time with him. I think so.
It is tough, slothfulness, like just having a hard time accomplishing things, and even when you're working towards something, you feel like, oh, what is going on? I'm just not hitting where I need to hit. So, yeah.
I think I more understand that term of slothfulness in not being motivated. That's probably where I see it more. I don't necessarily associate slothfulness as just like wanting to stay in my room all the time or not do anything, but more so just not do the things that I should be doing, like things for my job or reading my Bible. I mean, even for today, for example, like I've been doing great things and I wouldn't probably change what I did, but I probably should have been doing laundry and cleaning my kitchen, you know, things like that where they're just kind of chilling in the background.
But slothfulness just sometimes that there's kind of different motivations. I'm much more motivated by people than I am by a task or something. So when it comes to tasks or like the paperwork I see on the corner of my desk, I am very adverse to actually getting to that.
Some of the things that, you know, when you procrastinate or don't do things that you need to get done, is it because like other things are right in front of you and you just kind of do the things that are right in front of you? Or do you think that sometimes you are purposefully in your mind avoiding things that you need to do? You know what I'm saying?
When I have a bunch of things to do, it's like almost that my brain just gets like too busy, and then just too full of everything, that the easiest thing to do is to sloth out and just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to chill. Or the other thing I feel like is that I just take whatever's in front of me and I do it, even if it's not the most important thing I should be doing.
If for work I have to make phone calls or things where I just feel like I'm gonna bother someone, that is usually the times when I'm like, I don't have a stubborn streak in me. And one of the ways that, like, if someone asks me to do something, this is bad, and I disagree with it, I have had times where I've sat through and smiled and nodded my head and then walked away and done what I intended to do in the first place.
But I think I will dodge assignments or tasks. I'll dodge them by, doing smaller menial tasks. I'll dodge them by just straight up doing nothing. I'll dodge them by going and doing something that I actually want to do in hopes that this will somehow motivate me to do the thing that I don't want to do. And I tend to kind of wait until the right moment, which is often not actually the right convenient moment.
Like I said, like if I really don't want to do something, I will push it off and not do it. For example, I redid the cry room at church and I wanted to spray paint the lamps, but I didn't really know how to do it and didn't really trust myself to do it. And the spray can has been sitting on my desk for at least a month and a half. Just haven't done it.
I like to think that I put them off so I have more time to think about them and reflect and pray. But sometimes it's work I just don't want to do, and I just put it off. But I also think that it's important to not be busy all the time and to take breaks and to have time to think about stuff.
And getting distracted is so easy for me, especially with conversations. And if I start conversating, I'm pulling into a whole nother direction than what I was coming to do. I would say that mostly, that and attention span and procrastination would be another one, I think. So.
I don't necessarily jump on every opportunity that comes my way, but I
Yeah.
will do certain things to avoid other things. But also a lot of it is just kind of selfish as well. Like, what would I enjoy more? So it's like a higher priority in my mind anyway. Some of that is also avoidance as well.
There are things that have to get done, but they kind of drain energy out of me in doing those things. So I'm just more, it doesn't bring me joy. It's not something that is fun to do. So I just kind of avoid it. It's one thing to just be at peace and say, well, this is nice. It's another thing to say, I'm avoiding something because now it seems like a negative and I shouldn't be avoiding that. Why am I avoiding that? It makes you think to a deeper level about it.
It's given me that motivation because I can say, oh, this is my tendency to do this. And so I recognize it and then I fight against it.
Yes, it can be difficult to like continue to have that motivation for things that I personally want to do and to like really fight for it and not get distracted or overwhelmed by what other people have like expectations for.
But I honestly don't feel like I have the tools or the knowledge on how to break that.
I have chosen to go into a career that is my absolute 100% passion. Because I know if it's something that's just kind of work, I will default to complacency. So I pursue things where I have high goals and ambition for myself. The other way is surrounding myself with accountability and other people who are trying to do tasks.
It actually helps being married to Aiden because he sees when I'm doing it and can call me out on it. And I think the fear kind of ties into that. If I don't trust myself or I fear the outcome or the situation, then I'll be even more slothful in the process.
I try to be honest about it and get to the things that I have put off, although sometimes they just don't get done.
Yeah, I don't deal with it well. If I can be honest, I don't make myself a priority. You're so much doing for others. You forget to make yourself a priority and care what you need to do. Or you kind of rid yourself because you're always living in someone else's kind of goals or settings and things like that.
I deal with it in the fact that like eventually the thing gets done. I know that it has to get done, and I know that it will get done. I don't know. I don't know if I deal with that well. If there's like a deadline involved, that increases the pressure and the feeling of not peace. And then as that gets closer, that desire gets stronger to resolve that peace. Here's the deadline. Never go past that. That is extreme stress.
Mindfulness is the state of being aware, being present with your mind, being focused wherever you need to be, knowing I have this deadline coming up in a week. If I do 10 minutes of work today, that's less work I'll have to start tomorrow. The importance of being intentional in doing something. If I know my tendencies, so how can I best work in those tendencies without just saying, I'm going to, no, I don't know, that I'll never procrastinate again, because that's not true. That's just lying.
Right. So, basic fear and desire. Every number has a basic fear and desire. So the basic fear for the 9 is loss or separation. The basic desire is wholeness or peace of mind. Does this sound familiar? And if so, why do you think that is?
I think that is true. Because I remember, like, even if it was just some random item, like a pencil or something that I lost, like it really haunts me for a long time. Like, I have a list of all the things that I have lost. and I still pray that I'll find them.
How long is this list?
The one from Cincinnati or the one from
Oh my! Yeah.
This is why I'm so proud that I've never lost a sock in the washing machine.
That's
because
impressive.
I always check them out. They all have to be there. If they're not there, I go hunt for them.
Especially losing relationships and people is probably my like greatest fear. I would definitely agree with that. I think a lot of people think that nines will just go with whatever other people want. It isn't just, oh, give them whatever they want and I have zero opinions myself. It's, I have an opinion, you have an opinion. How can I try to find a way to harmonize? I will look for points where we agree. I will look for positions where we like can see eye to eye. My desire for peace doesn't mean it does not mean that I don't speak up. I do share my opinion. It doesn't mean that I conform myself and I just take on their opinions. It means that when I do share my opinions, I make it very, very clear that I don't want this to threaten the relationship and that I value and consider valid what they think and their opinions as well. The choice I'm making is have an opinion about this or maintain peace as much as possible in the relationship. Some people, especially nines, will try to create a false peace by just kind of going with whatever the other person wants and erasing themselves from the equation. And that's not healthy. And that's not the type of peace that Christ brings. And so Christ, in his grace and forgiveness, also pushes me towards the healthier side.
I start to, if I'm kind of away from people or even like not in connection with certain people for a while, then I start to feel that, and I definitely don't like it. I would get my energy from being with people, but I'm not necessarily going to be the life of the party there. I'll just be there, you know? I wouldn't, if I were to withdraw, it's because, yeah, I would maybe be afraid I don't want to maybe mess something up by being present with someone, you know? And if we're wanting to keep others happy, which I think is, or just, you know, keep peace with others, I would care about their time. So if they're not wanting to spend their time in that way, I don't even want to like bother them, you know? And so, or maybe the fear of like, maybe they don't want to spend time with me, so I'm just probably not going to ask because then I don't have to worry about it, you know, things like that.
Something that is more common for us is to be people pleasers, wanting to make people happy. Sometimes that means setting yourself aside, that I might not like this, but I'm not going to do anything about it because I want to make sure someone else is happy first, that they're taken care of. And it also provides a peace of mind knowing, well, if everyone else around me is okay, then I'm okay. It isn't always true because you do have to take yourself into account, I've learned.
Yeah.
But it's something that kind of drives motivation with
others. Wholeness is, you know, understanding one another and not just like surface level, but like knowing them, you know, fully, you know, even identify things in each other that are things that we could improve upon, you know, like constructiveness and being able to be open with someone. And I always appreciate
wholeness.
that.
Yeah.
You're looking at
like,
the wholeness.
Yeah. Is that
to
kind
have
of
peace of mind almost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like if let's say if I'm going shopping, I can like go on shopping trips and like never buy anything because in my mind I have like this ideal item in mind that fits like all the requirements that I have.
I am very, very open to criticism because I really do desire to see my blind spots and address them. I'm a very changeable person, and that desire can override other things like fear of loss, risking that relationship even for wholeness.
There's something because you can't always just put things off because those conflicts, those just personal, sometimes grievances people have will build up. Like kind of the terminology people use sometimes is your fuse goes off. People kind of explode and they just go off on someone. I found that in the long term, it tends to be important to be able to approach just conversation with people. Otherwise, at some point, you get to a point where you can't hold back conflict and it has to come out. And then it can come out in an unhealthy way.
Head triad, the heart triad, and the gut triad or the body triad. And it doesn't mean if you are in the head triad, you don't have a heart and you don't have a body, you know, obviously, but you're driven more in one area than the other. For example, your number 9 is in the gut or the body triad. And according to the road back to you, they are driven by anger, and they ask the question, what is wrong here? They live life by instincts and gut, and they're honest and direct. And each number in the triad does something different with the anger, and the 9 forgets this anger. What in your life can attribute to being in this triad, kind of based on what I just said? I can also repeat what I just said.
I do, yeah. I mean, you pick up vibes from people, but I wouldn't say that I'm really good at that.
Okay.
Yeah, honest and direct, definitely. I think I've changed. I may have years ago done that. I usually ask why. I don't know if that's part of it, but because in early childhood we put the emphasis on what is right in teaching generally. What is going right, and try to build on that rather than what's wrong. You may wonder, was there something wrong? But take the good characteristics and build on those. It's too negative for me. You look at a child and you build on what's positive, not what's not there. I forget. I do tend to it goes away. It's like not immediate, but I don't hang on to it.
Like, that's why I like to experience things, or like that's why I would like to go visit people in their homes, or that's why I like to go see people in person, because like you can get this feeling from like where they're at or what they do or how they act around people. Like I can better understand what's going on in their life if I have seen part of it versus them just tell me. It makes me at peace when I can like see what's going on. The second thing you said about anger, how 9s disconnect from their anger, I don't think I relate to that at all. I was a pretty angry child. I actually remember sitting in my religion class praying to God that he would take my temper away, because I knew it was bad and I just couldn't control it. Like when I would get mad, I would get mad. I will say that like my anger as a child, like that intense burning anger, I feel like I have not necessarily felt in a long time. I think God has truly helped me in that way. My competitive side is like a way to kind of release some of that anger sometimes.
Are you more the suppressed than the forget?
I think I'm a little more suppressed, because I don't forget. Because I'm, like I said, it stays in my mind, and I eat myself up, and I'm just like, dang, and then something just can happen. Someone can say something. I don't know what it is about it. It just can't, especially if it's the same person. If it's the same person that I'm suppressing my anger from and don't really confront, and then it gets to a point where they say something one day, I'm just kind of like, boom, those whole 6 months or whatever holding it just comes out in one, boom, everything you experience, which is not healthy. I'm a big person of, I want to try to reconcile it if it can be. I don't like the whole, let's move on. I'm like, it's awkward. I'm trying to like address it and let's talk it out. And then if they don't want to, then I go back and again, be myself. I'm like, oh, dang. Yeah, maybe I was wrong. It's like, but you can't do that. But I happen to see myself do it a lot of times. I feel like I used to accuse somebody being direct that's kind of maybe being rude, but it's not them being rude. Some people just got to get the job done. So they got to be direct. Kind of like, whoa, what? Kind of rude. You know what I'm saying? I just kind of back up.
This is a weird example. But if someone was parked in the wrong spot, or they were parked illegally or something like that, and you had to like tell them about it, you would be like, hey, I really like your car. First of all, you have a great car. And then, you kind of like fluff things up a little bit. And then you get to the point and you're like, but actually your awesome car is in the wrong place.
I won't even do all of that. I don't fluff up. If I know you, I'll say something. But if I don't, I'll probably be like, well. You are grown and you make a decision. So I'm going to go. Who am I to tell you? I'll suggest that you are in the wrong spot, right? Yeah, I may say something, but then if a person say, well, F you, I'm like, well, you're right. All right, well, have a nice day. Just think, because I don't have to deal with all the things. I just rather just walk away. Gotcha. But if I'm passionate about something, I really fight for it. But I don't have the energy to argue or debate, whatever.
When someone is in stress or insecure or unhealthy, they go to the negative sides of another number. And when they're healthy and feeling good and confident and positive, they go to the healthier sides of a number. For example, as a 9, when you're healthy and insecure, you go to the positive sides of the 3. And when you're stressed and insecure, you go to the negative sides of the 6. With the unhealthy or negative side to the 6. And the 6 is known as the loyalist or the guardian. And obviously there's good things of the 6, but the deadly sin of the 6 is fear. And so sometimes they get stressed about things, they get anxious about things. They are kind of known as like, quote unquote, the devil's advocate, because they look at all the bad things that could potentially happen. With that, obviously, in a way that can be used as a good thing. When they're unhealthy, they obviously spiral down into stress and anxiety and not knowing what to do and everything. Do you think that you can relate to anything about the 6s, the negative sides
When
of the 6?
I'm unhealthy, I think I become like more fearful and therefore more slothful and don't really want to do anything. I definitely can tell when I'm getting more anxious. And it honestly is kind of a physical reaction. Like it feels like I can't breathe very well, or I get headaches and I just start thinking about the way everything could go wrong, which, like Aiden said, is his normal state. He's really good in crisis situations and he keeps a very level head. Like when we were living in Seward, our furnace started smoking and it filled our entire apartment with smoke. And I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I smelled smoke and turned the light on and our apartment was full of it. And Aiden knew exactly what to do. He covered me in blankets and sweaters and socks and put me in the car. And when there is a crisis, and I would probably like shut down and not know what to do, he gets stuff done.
I feel like I used to have a lot more optimism, but I think that honestly, once I hit the adult world, I feel like a lot more of that fear and anxiety has kind of taken over. I have these big goals and ambitions, but sometimes like even just taking the next step has become a lot more difficult because my fear and anxiety is telling me everything that could go wrong, and is it even worth it? It makes me question whether or not it's going to take away from who I am because I won't have time to take care of me. If I feel like I don't have all of the information, I feel like I'm not as confident to make the next step. For instance, right now I'm starting a business, and like I could sign all of this paperwork. I'd rather have all of this figured out before moving ahead with the next step. And I have a lot more questions here.
Positive sides of the 3. And the 3 is known as the achiever or the performer. And 3s are the good sides about the 3s are that they get things done. They can be competitive, but they value success. They value hard work. They are, if you ask them to do something for them, they will get it done. What are some things that you can relate to in that way?
When I'm healthy, I get crap done. I'm very into surroundings and the place and the aesthetic of where I am at. If my home is in disarray or cluttered or something, I feel stressed. I feel overwhelmed. When I get to a point where like, okay, I'm going to just make it nice and I'm going to work hard and make it a happy place again, then I can clean a lot of things very quickly and make it feel calm and peaceful again.
I definitely am achievement driven. I am ambitious. I have high goals for myself. I am making steps towards them. It's also kind of situation by situation too. If I am choosing what I'm doing for an afternoon to go have fun, like I'm confident in my decisions, but if I'm with a bunch of other people, I want to know what everybody's thing is and how can we find something for that middle ground. And I won't be as confident to just say this is what I want to do.
The next few questions are kind of more focused on faith and Christianity. But I'm bringing in Bible characters for each of the numbers. Not to say that we can't say, obviously, that they are this number because we don't know them, they're dead, that kind of thing. But they also have different characteristics and similar characteristics of some of the numbers. And so you can agree or disagree. Some people are like, dang, yes. And then some people are like, whoa. So no. So yeah. So the ones that I brought in for the 9 are Jonah and Abraham. And the reason why I brought in those ones is because with Jonah, God tells him to go to Nineveh and, preach the word to other people. And he goes the opposite way. And that kind of just goes with the thing about avoidance with conflict. Because he's like, no, I don't trust that you're going to take care of me, so I'm going to go this other way. And then with Abraham, he puts more of his faith in what God says. God was like, yo, he didn't say yo, but he said, he said,
The new Laura Lee translation.
Exactly. I'm coming out with it too. No. He said, kill your son Isaac. And Abraham probably had problems with it, but he put his faith in God, knowing that he knew what was best. And then when God says, take all of your family and everything you own and move to another country, Abraham still had faith in him in that way. And, he was a great leader and the father of all nations. He had, good faith in that rather than in other people necessarily. God was the one that was guiding his life. So do you think that you can relate with either one of those characters?
As far as Jonah goes, I guess I can also relate to that. I definitely have had moments in my life where
Been swallowed by fish.
I've been swallowed by a fish. It was a salmon. Yeah, where I ran away, where I'm like, I don't want to listen to what God has to say. I mean, I haven't ran too far. I think that's why I haven't been swallowed by a big fish yet. But there's definitely been times where, like, I've felt like I maybe knew better than God did, and chosen that.
So it's crazy to me that you say that Jonah is a 9 because he is by far my favorite biblical character, because I do relate to him. He is so stubborn, and he just he has a plan and he's gonna follow through, and he continues to do all these really dumb things and yet he continues to do things as though he's got it under control, and he's rebelling against God in a stubborn sense. And yet God is still using him. And I'm just like, this is such a beautiful story. I really don't want to say that we are the same, but we have some similar qualities.
I think that you'd be interpreting that as him running away from what he knows is going to be an unpeaceful situation. He's going to a place where he knows he's going to have enemy, and he's going to say a very unpopular message. And he doesn't want to do that. And he'll go to very extreme lengths to avoid that. I think I do relate to that. The desire to not bring a hard message to people that you're not in a good relationship with.
But yeah, the whole first part of Jonah, just him avoiding conflict, pushing it off, and literally running away from what God told him to do because he didn't want to do it. But also I think he's kind of justice means that they should be destroyed because they were doing bad things.
Yeah.
And wanting things to be fair and that kind of stuff. But God has compassion, and that's wonderful.
And of course, Jonah avoiding, going the other way, of course. And the direct confrontation, Jonah would have had to directly confront the people, and I do not enjoy that.
So for Jonah, I would say the two things that stand out from remembering the story of Jonah are anger and fear, which are two things that we've talked about in the unhealthy side of the 9s. That Jonah is scared of going to these people. He doesn't want to. And he's afraid of taking under this task that God's given him. So he just avoids it. Even after he's there and he's done it, in his mind, he knows what he wanted to happen, what he thought was right to happen. So he becomes angry with God. And so even when God does good things and saves these people, Jonah says, well, I hate it. Jonah is just an unfortunate story of what he ends up just being a grump.
I think what you were saying about Abraham is where I want to be, trusting God and putting God first in my relationships. I don't know if I necessarily super relate. I feel like that's a goal of mine, is to be more like Abraham. That would be my goal.
So when I teach this lesson in Bible, it's one of our lessons that we talk about in 3rd grade. And we always talk about God's goodness. And so I feel in the past 2 years, just because I've had to interact with this text so much, I've really just been thinking about how God was good in that situation. And Abraham knew that God was good when he was going, because if he didn't know that God was good, he wouldn't sacrifice be willing to do that. And he was willing to do that because he trusted that God was good, not necessarily what we want it to be, but how it ought to be according to his will. Throughout my life, I feel understanding God's faithfulness has been a theme, just like seeing it in other people's lives or seeing it in my life, and something that thinking about his faithfulness is something is probably one of the characteristics of him that I consistently go back to and rely upon, is just thinking about his faithfulness. I can be patient because I know that he is faithful, and I feel like Abraham had that understanding.
When Abraham when God says, I'm going to wipe these cities out, and Abraham says, well, if you can find like at least 50 people, and they work down the number 50, 45, 40, 30, and they try to work it down.
Yeah.
And what I see in Abraham there is this desire, like, it doesn't have to come to this. There doesn't have to be conflict. And it gets down to the point where, like, I think it's like one guy, he's coming to God, praying, desperate for peace to avoid this conflict. But he's also willing to step out and trust even when things are hard.
But just then also to get that promise that you're going to be a father of nations, and such a heavy, I feel like it's not a burden, but it's just such a heavy, like, whoa, me? I think I get that, like me. Like, I think one thing I constantly sure myself is that knowing that, I do got something to say, but I sometimes don't see it as valuable. You kind of suppress in the midst of intermingling with everything else, then you just put others first. And don't see what you bring is maybe valuable or true, even in like old age, like Abraham. Like, just you're still clinging on and trusting and trying to remain hopeful.
So do you have any Bible verses that you like, that help you with some of the things we've talked about today, or just in general, any Bible verses that you like?
Exodus 14. And so thinking about the fact that the Lord, he fights for us on our behalf, and it's nothing that we could ever do, in situations where it seems far beyond us, knowing that we just need to be still and trust, and then know that he will fight for us and that he's working on our behalf.
I don't think any of them has stuck in my mind as much as I think it was in Luke. I don't know why. If anybody asks me if there's any verse ever, that's the first thing that I think about. And I admittedly have like pretty bad memory. Like I really try to like remember things, but they just don't stick. Yeah, so that's the one verse that I always go back to.
Mine is Galatians 1:10, and that one gets me every single time. That hurts my head and my heart because I definitely want the approval of people and keeping their interests in mind. And to be saying that doesn't always make me a servant of Christ is just like mind-blowing a little bit. It's a hard and challenging one.
One of them is Colossians chapter 1, verse 20, reminding us that Christ is the ultimate reconciler, that he is the one who brings true peace by paying for all of our sin, by defeating sin, death, and the devil on the cross, and actually getting to this place where all things, not just us, but all relationships and creation can be reconciled to Christ in real, actual peace that we get to both hope for in the future and experience now through his grace.
Hebrews 10:23. It makes me think of an anchor and that kind of imagery, but also someone like physically holding on to something with all of their might and not wanting to let go. Peace is something that you kind of have to hold on to and keep a hold of, and could easily be pushed away or pulled away from you. But if you hold fast to the confession of your hope, so hold on to Jesus and the hope that he professes and that we confess in our creeds and in our prayers and that kind of stuff, then he who promised is faithful, and God promised to be faithful to us. I'm a really big fan of all verses that hint at the new covenant and the promises of Jesus through that new covenant. That's the nerdy theology side of me coming out. But
the ones about love in John, in 1st, 2nd, 3rd John are just powerful. Romans has a lot, really powerful. The part about workmanship, does it come after it? By grace are you saved through faith alone?
Ephesians
not
2.
Works,
Yeah.
For we are God's workmanship.
Yeah.
I like that verse a lot. That's I think that's cool.
I think a verse that I really enjoy is that 1 Corinthians verse when Paul talks about becoming all things to all people. Did I make myself? I am assimilating myself so much to the culture that I'm not assimilating far enough where I'm like watering down or weakening truth, but I'm doing it that I may connect with people within that culture or within that setting to love them well. Not all, but may some may hear the gospel. And so I just think as a person who loves people, and Paul is saying you don't have to be this to come get this gospel, that I'm willing to come to you. I'm willing to come and enter into your situation with you as God does. Also become culturally what you are, that I may win some for the gospel.
Yeah.
Without taking away my truth, without taking away what I've called, you know.
Isaiah 41:10. And I think that verse will always just be close to my heart. Things change. There's a lot of unknowns. There is just the stuff in life that's going to be different. It's going to break. Relationships are going to break. We're broken people working with broken people. Like, there are just things that are going to wither and fade. But the one thing that never changes, the one thing that will always be with us is God. When in stress, I start fearing things and I start doubting things. And that's the number one thing that I remind myself of is, no, fear not. God has got it. God is with me.
Philippians chapter 4, 6 and 7. In a way, it's kind of a stark thing to say, don't be anxious, because there's a lot of just the presence of anxiety and depression amongst people nowadays. And it doesn't work for a lot of people to just say, don't do it. And I don't think it's necessarily an anxiety, a clinical anxiety type thing, but more so just like stress that happens in life, or anxious or fears of the unknown. And so a lot of times it helps me just reset and think on faith. I'm anxious about this, I'm worried about this, but I can still give thanks to God in my prayer, just to be thankful, because in all things he's God. So it recenters me in that Abrahamic faith that just, I know, I don't know why, but God told me this, so that's what I believe. Because his word over mine, and boy, his word is over mine.
All right, this is the second to last question. How has God played a major role in your life and struggles with some of these aspects we've talked about today?
You know, like, everything you do is you're doing it for the glory of God. And just so I think, like, knowing that here, even when I can fall into slothfulness, or I can just become comfortable, knowing that my life here isn't necessarily meant to be comfortable. In fact, like, it won't be. As you know, as Christians, we're guaranteed not to have a peaceful life, and not to, you know, we're going to be uncomfortable. And so our ultimate purpose on earth is here to use, you know, our gifts, abilities God has given us to, you know, further his kingdom and bring his kingdom here.
I think over the years he's definitely revealed a lot of having to be like more assertive in trying to get things done, how to deal with anger, how to deal with not being super overwhelmed with conflict that might be happening around me that I might not have any control over. I'm very thankful that he's given me the opportunity to be aware, hopefully, of myself and like what my weaknesses and my strengths are, or things I need to work on.
You know, I feel like the thing that I am trying to work on is how to tune my thoughts to kind of follow God's. There's a part of me that tears myself down a lot on a regular basis. And so kind of giving those thoughts over to him. How do I care for people and recognize that I also have limitations? How do I walk that line of avoiding it, or like addressing it in a way that God would want? And I think that's just kind of an ongoing discussion I have to have with God every day. How do I give him each day?
God's promises and his gifts are universal. They are for everyone, but there are parts that are always going to stick out to you more. God's message of reconciliation to himself and to each other is one of the huge biblical themes and works of Christ that is massively important to me. For me, fear of lost relationships, desire for peace. How can I fear, love, and trust God above all else?
A lot of like, I was raised in the church, and I never really had like a coming to faith moment. My relationship with God and understanding faith was very more like a steady changing of mindset kind of stuff. Not that I was ever like non-Christian, but so like my dad in high school, I lived like 20 minutes from my high school, and we lived 30 minutes from church. So we would drive a lot and be in the car a lot. And he had me read through the book of Romans and circle things that I was questioning or didn't understand, and we would just talk about them in the car together. But it was nice to have like a controlled, peaceful environment to talk through those questions with my dad. Just learning how God can be the peace that I'm searching for, and how I will never find it without him. And if I try and do it on my own, then I'm just going to be anxious.
Knowing that we can go to God in prayer. The Lord has been present with me throughout my life. Like I said, when I'm in a tizzy about worrying about something, I try to pray, and I do, but I'm still in a tizzy. So, letting go and letting God do it is another lesson. God sends people into your life to
For sure.
Do things. That's been the way it's always been.
When I think about loss, like, I don't want to be lost. Like, so, yeah, none of us don't. So that's always a fear too. Like, Lord, like, I am so grateful. But there are moments where you doubt and you're like, man, like, when is the Lord just says, I'm done? I'm so grateful he's not that guy. But it's a fear. So I won't say that I won't act like I've never thought that. I don't think that at times, or doubt. I think being in a community and having conversations like this, where you're in spaces where you are affirmed and where you are navigating, you're processing, you're learning. I think that's been another way I've seen Christ. And knowing that even being a 9, like, it doesn't define me, but it's something that helps me navigate more of who I am and how Christ has wired me in a way.
Wow, what a question. God has played through all of them, the highs and the lows. There's a lot with life that I don't think I could live well if God was not a part of my life. God is the one that is keeping me from going insane. God has just been everywhere, living and breathing and helping me through people that he's brought into my life, helping me through his word. If I didn't have him, I would be very lost, confused, and probably a couch potato.
It's a deep question. And one summer when I worked at camp, it was really surprising for me to see the interpersonal conflict amongst counselors. But the thing that amazed me more that summer is that ministry happened, is that God worked. So despite our own shortcomings, God's faithful. God works. So he'll work through my fears, and he will work to bring, sometimes to bring that peace. It won't always be the peace of mind the way I want it to be, but sometimes it's the peace of mind the way I need it to be, so that I can continue learning about how to achieve that peace of mind, how to achieve that wholeness in those relationships, how to be in that relationship with other people, to be a better expression of my relationship with my Heavenly Father.
All right, so last question is, what encouragement or advice would you say to someone who is also your number?
Don't be afraid maybe to reach out, and now I'm telling myself to do this, but to like reach out to people and because most likely you're probably not affecting their time or taking away from them. Most likely they probably want, they don't mind that at all. God has given us all of us different gifts and strengths, and just knowing that my strengths are different than others and that I can be confident with who God has made me to be.
I think if there was one thing that I would say to my Enneagram number 9 peeps out there, it's okay to say no to things. One of my church elders said this once that really stuck with me. When you are able to say no to things, that's when your yeses actually really mean something. Most people aren't going to be as offended as you think that they're going to be, and puts value to the things that you actually say yes to.
But while you care about those around you, you also have to take care of yourself and to take care of your relationship with God, because he reminds you that your identity is in him, not in how others perceive you or how well you can help and assist them. Yeah, just seeking after that relationship is the most important thing.
As a 9, you will always want to, in positive and negative ways, put others before yourself. And that's great. And that's even a Christian thing to do and go for. But find people who you can be honest with, where you're not afraid that saying something or doing something is going to jeopardize your relationship. Try to find ways to build that trust with others, because when you do that, it's a lot easier and less stressful to maintain that peace.
Is that the peace doesn't come from you, and you can't fabricate it, and you can't make it. The peace only comes from God. And no matter how hard you try, you can't make everything perfect. You can't always avoid conflict because we live in a fallen world. And I don't even want to say trust enough or like have enough faith, because that's not really what I mean. It's more God's going to do what he has to do with you, whether you like it or not.
It's okay. Well, let's wait till tomorrow can we discuss this tomorrow? It's not in our control. Mm-hmm. It's not us. It's by the grace of God that we're here. So hang in there.
Yeah.
To all you nines out there, there is hope for us to know that we're worth the fight. We are valued. We are loved. Let's not wallow in our self-pity and what we don't or what we lack or what we think too much of us. You know, I asked myself this question one time, like, do I love too hard? And I'm like, no, I don't love too hard. I think I love just enough. So we may come off as loving hard or over this and over that. Let's keep the faith. Let's keep being encouraged. And we still got work to do. And and we can still, grow. And so remind yourself you are valued, you are loved, and that you don't love too hard. All right, cool.
I was thinking several thoughts when you asked that question, but I think the main thing that comes to mind is actually from a song. It's on the radio right now. Love God, love people. What advice do I have? Love God, love people. There's a lot of people pleasing that's involved in there, and remembering to love God first is who our leader is, and that is who we should listen to, and just loving people where they're at and seeing their strengths and their abilities. That can be a really good blessing and strength, especially when we have loving God coming first.
I would say to other nines, take into account that peace of mind that you have and think about how you can just intentionally make that part of your life. Enjoy where I am now and continue just kind of sustaining myself for the future so that next week I can also have this. What can I do in my relationships now, or in my work now, or in my tasks now? Sometimes that means approaching the conversation I don't want to have. Sometimes it means doing that paper for school I didn't want to do. It can really help to be able to just process yourself, how to plan out and continue just moving yourself towards the future. Being mindful, it's being intentional about that, and it's living who you are, realizing that desire for peace of mind, for peace with others. So live in that and embody that for others. So you can do it yourself, and then by doing it yourself, you make you better at what you do for those around you. And it only builds you up more, and it builds them up more.
Oh, hello. Wow, just stretching over here, Thank you so much for watching, for going through this journey with me, and I hope and I pray that this really did encourage you in your faith, that inspires you and reminds you that you are not alone. And it points you back to Christ too. That's important too. The links for the other episodes are down in the description if you want to check those out. So check those out if you would like to. But I hope that this was very encouraging and inspiring for you. So, hope to see you soon. See you later.